Hey guys, welcome in. Happy Friday night. I know it's the weekend. So, as you guys are coming in, thank you for starting your weekend off on Mars. Living life on Mars. That's what it's all about. So, as you guys come in, thank you for joining in. And thank you also, if you wouldn't mind, sharing this video out. We're talking about a really powerful subject this week. This is part of the 30 books in 30 weeks um, personal development reading challenge. And so the book that we're focusing on, we're in week 4 right now, and we're focusing on codependency. So the book of this week is Codependent No More. So we've invested already about 5 days talking about this subject and learning about what codependency is, identifying some of the signs, identifying some history and some pathologies that maybe lead up to and contribute to a codependent lifestyle. And so yesterday we talked about the recovery process. And so today we're going to talk about some of the components of that. For those of you who don't already know me, my name is Marcy Batiste. I'm a public speaker, I'm an author, and I am a personal trauma and recovery coach. So I help women shine, basically, that's what moves me. Helping women shine, helping them truly discover and embrace their star power is what it's all about. And for me, 2018 represents an opportunity to really raise the bar, for myself, to raise the bar for my clients. And we just started a new coaching program, a new group coaching program, January 15th. That's going amazing. And I'm excited to invite you guys in to join the Raising the Bar community. What I'm doing is working with and leading this group of 1,000 women. I want to touch the lives of 1,000 women this year and truly take them on a journey of transformation to really seek out, embrace, and understand what their star power consists of, what those 10 quality pillars of star power are. And man, it's been great so far. I also have a company called Bankable Success Advisors, which is a leading recovery solutions provider. So you can see how those two marry together. Corporate side, I work with businesses on helping them with domestic violence and workplace violence, education and awareness, and disaster contingency planning. And then on the personal side, really helping individuals optimize their personal, financial, emotional investments and cure emotional bankruptcy. And so that's why this subject of codependency is so important, because so many people live a life of codependency and don't even know what the word means. And that was me several years ago. I would say probably 8 or 9 years ago, before I really got clear about what codependency was. And then it's still, even after I learned what it was, it took me a little while to work through that process and to heal from that process. And this book that I share, the reason why I picked this, hey Dr. Rodney Pearson, the reason why I picked this book is because it was a game changer for me on my own healing journey from codependency and toxic relationships. And so, like I said, I'm all about recovery. I'm all about healing. That is what I build my business on. That's what fuels me. That's what drives me. I'm a domestic violence advocate and champion. So certainly working with individuals who have a history of trauma, such as domestic violence or past abuses, might be sexual abuse, sexual assault, molestation, those types of things. Those traumas are breeding grounds for codependency, you guys. They're breeding grounds for it. And so I would be remiss as a trauma recovery coach not to have an understanding of codependency and how that all fits together in these toxic relationships and these choices that a lot of individuals make. I work mostly with women, but I do have male clients as well. But codependency is not a woman's issue. So let's be clear about that. Much of what I share on these videos are universal problems. They're universal struggles. And so while the majority of my client base is female, and that's certainly my target, is helping women shine, helping them embrace their star power. I know my brothers out there need help too. So codependency though, like I said, I want to talk about the recovery side of it. So we talked about yesterday the components of recovery. So you go through certain phases, and it's like a grieving process. So you've got your denial. You want to deny that there's a problem. You want to deny that what's going on. Then you have anger. Then you go through this bargaining process where you're like, well, this for that. If you change this, then I'll change that. If you give up this, then I'll stay. And then that leads into sometimes some heavy and pretty deep depression. And then finally, as you start coming out of it, you reach a level of acceptance. And once you get to acceptance, you understand that you're not defunct, you're not inferior, you're not a bad person. You just need help and you don't have the tools. And so these videos, and the reason why I'm sharing and discussing this topic in particular, is to help build up the toolbox. I want to give you the tools to at least begin having these conversations, and to let you know that there are people out there who can help you and are willing to help you and want to help you, who want to help you get healed and get whole and have happy, healthy relationships. And the codependents have a massive struggle with anger, because as a codependent, as a reformed codependent, I know for a fact that you just want to accommodate. You want to fix everything for everyone. You want to make it all okay. And then you start feeling resentment, and then you feel guilty that you feel resentment. And then that becomes the cycle. And meanwhile, the more resentment you feel and the more times the cycle continues, hey Capria, the more times the cycle continues, then the worse the codependency gets and the more the anger builds up. And as a codependent, you don't process the anger. You want to pretend like it's not there. You want to pretend like everything's fine. You're not really pissed off, and you don't really hate your life. You don't really hate the situation how it is. And so I want to really invest this time tonight to talk about really dealing with the anger, how to process the anger. Most people want to repress anger. They want to pretend, particularly codependents, pretend that everything's okay. I'm not angry. It's okay. It's going to be fine. Everything's always going to be fine. No, it's not. Everything's not fine now. Everything's not going to be fine until you start processing the emotions, processing the relationship, and coming to some resolutions about your situation. A lot of times people feel that being angry is bad. Anger is normal. It's a normal emotion. The problem is that most of us don't know how to handle that emotion. They don't know what to do with that emotion. They don't know how to process those feelings. And so rather than deal with something that's really uncomfortable, which is the anger, we tend to try and stuff it aside and pretend that we're not really mad, pretend that we're not upset, pretend that it'll just all go away. And I'm here to tell you from my own personal experience, it doesn't go away until you deal with it. It doesn't go away until you come to a resolution to whatever's creating the anger. Whether it's the relationship itself, whether it's bad behaviors in the relationship, whether it's, lies and cheating and alcoholism and food addictions and, all sorts of addictions and just bad behaviors in general. And it doesn't matter. Like the thing about anger is it doesn't really matter if you admit it or you deny it, it's ever present. So just because you don't admit you're angry, just because you don't talk to anybody about being angry, doesn't mean that you're not angry, and it certainly doesn't mean that people don't know it. Have you ever walked into a room and a couple maybe had just got done fighting, and you're just like, you walk into the room and they put on the happy face, they're serving tea and crumpets. Hey, Terry. Hey, Latoya. And you just feel the energy. So anger is an emotion. Anger is a form of energy. And so no matter what you do with it, no matter how hard you try to repress it and to hide it and to deny it, it's there. You can feel it. The people around you can feel it. As parents, if two parents are fighting and arguing, the kids walk in the room, so they stop fighting. The energy from the anger is still there, and everyone feels it. Everyone knows. It's like there's just this air of hostility kind of lurking around in the environment, unseen, most times unspoken, but ever present. And then all of a sudden, one day it explodes. And now there's this big, huge, massive issue going on that you never even wanted to admit that was an issue. You never wanted to admit that you were angry, but everybody kind of knew. And so people outside looking in was like, oh, I'm not surprised she snapped. She always seemed like she was just angry all the time. She seemed unhappy all the time. He seemed like he was always ready to just go off. He seemed like he was about ready to erupt. And that's what happens. Like, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to explode outward and blow up around you and affect everyone around you, or you're going to implode and it's going to slowly kill you from the inside. That's what happens with unprocessed anger. That's what happens with the emotion of anger if you choose to not deal with it. So I want to talk tonight about some myths that go along with anger that can maybe, I think, is what exacerbates the problem and why we hesitate so oftentimes to deal with anger and to discuss matters when we're angry about them. And one of the things is you have to discuss the issue. You don't have to discuss the issue while you're angry. So I want to be clear about that. So I'm not saying every time you feel like you're angry, you're mad, like now's the time to go address the situation. No, you need a plan. So we've talked about the planning for the conversation last week when we talked about crucial conversations. If you haven't watched those videos from last week on crucial conversations, it's a great one. And there was a reason why we talked about crucial conversations before we talked about codependency, because you got to learn how to talk in order to heal the codependency. So there is method to my madness, you guys, I promise you. So some myths about anger. Some people think it's not okay to feel angry. So that's why they want to deny. Oh, I'm not angry. And codependents are terrible. Like, we're terrible about that. I would deny my anger. Like, I felt like it was something wrong if I admitted that I wasn't happy, if I admitted everything wasn't perfect. So I felt like it wasn't okay to be angry. Some people feel like it's a waste of time. Like, oh, why even bother to discuss what I'm angry about? Nobody cares anyway, type of thing. Some people feel like in order for me to be a good person or a nice person, I can't ever get angry. I can't ever express my own dissatisfaction with situations or with life. Some people equate anger with losing control. Typically, people who equate anger, the emotion of anger, with the act of losing control are people who have been brought up in an environment where anger is not processed and it does that whole exploding thing that I talked about a few minutes ago. This is one of my favorites. People won't love me if I admit that I'm angry. And for me, that was a big one because I had terrible, terrible abandonment issues. And I had abandonment issues, particularly as it related to men. And because of those abandonment issues, then that made me seek out male approval and male validation. And then when I didn't get it, then that affected my self-esteem, which then perpetuated that cycle. And so I didn't ever want to admit, heaven forbid, that I be unhappy or I be dissatisfied with another person, because I needed them to like me. I needed them to approve of me. Codependents also don't ever want anybody to be mad at them. So they work really hard. I remember always going the extra mile for everyone. because I wanted that approval. I needed that validation. I needed someone to say, you're a good person, Marcy. You're doing a good job, Marcy. Pat you on the back, Marcy. So career-wise, I was always a top performer because I always wanted that approval, that validation. And so that's huge. But it's a myth about the emotion of anger that people can't be angry with us and still love us. And that's bringing me to another point. Like, just because there's the emotion of anger doesn't mean that someone doesn't love you because they get angry. It doesn't mean that you don't love someone else because you're angry about a behavior. And we have to start separating the emotions from the actions. They're two different things. They're two separate and apart from one another. I can love someone tremendously and not like their actions, not be in approval of their behaviors. I can love you and not ever have anything to do with you again because of your behaviors. They're separate and apart. And then there are people who we choose to interact with where there's really not a lot of emotion there. You're interacting with them for a different reason. And so understanding that the actions and the emotions are separate and apart. They're not necessarily conjoined. They're not twins. What else? I always feel like it's our job to make it right. Like, we have to fix it. So if you're angry, I'm going to assume responsibility over your anger because I'm codependent, and it's my job to make you not angry anymore. Whether you're angry with me or not, whether it has anything to do with me or not, if I'm codependent, I want to try and fix your problem. I haven't even focused on my own. And we talked about why that is. We talked about that earlier in the week. People think that anger equals violence. They think that anger means the relationship is over. If I'm angry with him, or he's angry with me, or she's angry with me, I'm angry with her, that suddenly, because the anger is there, we can no longer have a relationship. Or we equate, like I said, the anger with violence. And these are all because we've been brought up and subjected to an environment where anger, the emotion of anger, was not processed. And if it was processed in any way, it was not processed in a healthy way. And so this is part of the recovery process and trauma recovery, curing emotional bankruptcy. The things that I work with my clients on is we do like the 360 thing. We're dealing with, I always tell my ladies, like, I'm working with the whole woman. It's 360 degrees. I want all of you. I want to work with all of you. I want to know all of you so that we can heal all of you. And then you can then give all of you to your loved ones, your businesses, whatever the case may be. So the biggest thing is learning to process the emotion, and learning to process the emotion in a healthy way. When you feel angry, taking time out to just decide, okay, what actions need to take place in order for this to be addressed, to come to resolution. It doesn't mean you have to agree with someone's behaviors. It doesn't mean you have to be subjected to abuses or disrespect or anything like that. But you have to know, we talked about it in Crucial Conversations last week, you have to know what you want out when you go in, because you have to address it. You have to have these uncomfortable and crucial conversations much of the time in order to heal and recover from codependency. So being clear about that, and being honest about the emotion, being honest about the fact that you're angry, being clear about why you're angry, being clear with the fact that it's okay that you're angry and that you're not going to apologize for having the emotion of anger. We seem to want to apologize for genuine emotion, and you don't have to apologize for it. You have a right to your feelings. You have a right to your emotions. Find an outlet. So one of the things I always say, and I've gotten really, really, really good at, is not dealing with situations while I'm angry. So when I'm because I'm aware of acutely aware of my emotions. So if I know I'm angry about something, I know for a fact that I must not have that conversation in that moment. I know when I feel angry that I have to process the emotion. I have to come up with a plan. I have to know what I want out of it. And then in order to not just go all in and go ham on somebody, I have to go find something else to do with that energy. So I don't care if it's exercise. I don't care if it's a hobby. For me, a lot of times I write, and I highly encourage, as you're learning to process the emotion of anger, and when you're coming to terms with the fact that you feel angry, but you don't really know what to do with it, and you don't really know kind of how to bring that conversation to someone, I encourage you to write it down. Write a letter. Express everything that you feel in total, barren, raw honesty. And then after you're calm, reread the letter, decide if it's appropriate to send it or if it needs to be edited and then communicated. And a lot of times they need to be edited and then communicated, because what happens when you're angry is you're focusing on all of the emotion and you're purging all of that emotion, and you're not dealing with the issue. And in order to come to resolution, like we learned in Crucial Conversations last week, in order to come to resolution, you have to be in dialogue. And for dialogue to take place, there has to be honesty and respect. So it's okay to edit the letter, rewrite it, or reprocess the letter, and then go have that crucial conversation and deal with the anger in that way. So those are kind of the steps to processing, how to process anger, and then how to address situations when you feel the emotion of anger. So that's my message tonight on this Friday night. Codependent No More is the subject. 30 books in 30 weeks. It's part of a personal development reading series. And I welcome you all into the community. I welcome you to join me. As always, I appreciate you guys who jumped on live. If you're catching it on the replay, I appreciate that time investment as well. In the meantime and in between time, guys, thanks for living life on Mars. I'm out. We'll talk soon.